All right. As promised, this is the fun high wire act. I'm telling you things to make it seem like it's a lot of pressure and fun and exciting, but I'm telling speakers, no. So this is just talking. So like, don't. It's very hard to triangulate. So the way this is going to work, you might have seen a lot of faces on the agenda, but there's one group of three. How they're going to do that, I don't know. It's amazing. There's one group of two, so there aren't quite as many talks as it might look like. But they're going to zoom right by. It really is going to be 5 minutes for each talk because that's all we got. So the way this will work is I will pull up the slide deck and I will hit go, and then our speakers will go right at it. Our first speaker is Jade Brown. And you know what? I'll hold off on hitting it till you get right up here. That way you get all the time.
Hi, I'm Jade Brown. Yes.
All right.
I teach in the Access to Justice Clinic at BU Law, and I research in the area of housing and consumer law, and I want to talk to you today about ChatGPT and the role it can play in providing access to pro se litigants in housing eviction cases. So why is ChatGPT able to make a difference here? For one, there's a huge housing justice gap. 90% of tenants facing eviction lack an attorney. In contrast, 90% of landlords have an attorney, and only 4 states in the United States have what's called right to counsel in eviction cases. This means tenants are largely on their own in these cases. So could ChatGPT be a solution? We know that there are a lot of kinks to work out, but I think it could be. It has great potential for allowing folks to have some agency in their cases when they don't have an attorney. And that is the case for the large number of tenants. So what are some of the benefits of ChatGPT? For one, we know that it has great researching and drafting capabilities. This is something that tenants could use it for. It also has translation and dictation services, and it's improving on analysis and prediction. Certainly ChatGPT has some work to do, but I think it could get there. So how could tenants use this eviction? How could tenants use this technology in their cases? They can use it from start to finish, or from the notice to quit phase to the actual trial. And they can do this through self-guided navigation of the court process using questions like these. So for example, what is a notice to quit? I'm a tenant in Massachusetts and I just got one from a landlord. And then ChatGPT's response. So in Massachusetts, a notice to quit is a legal document served by a landlord to a tenant to terminate the tenancy. It is essentially the first step in an eviction case. So there the tenant has some context about what this document that they've gotten from their landlord means. And this is a pretty accurate response from ChatGPT. Next, the tenant might want to have some fun. They might want to say, can you tell me this in the style of Donald Trump? Very comical response, but might be helpful. Not as accurate as the first response. But next, the tenant might want to know about bad conditions in their apartment. So I have these things that are wrong with my apartment. Are there defenses that I can raise in this case? And so they want to know essentially whether this is something they should bring up. And they ask this question to ChatGPT, and here's the response. It tells them about the implied warranty of habitability. So this is something that essentially requires their landlord to keep their apartment in a safe and habitable condition. So now the tenant is armed with a defense that they can raise in their eviction case. Next, the tenant might want to know about provisions in their lease. So they have an upstairs neighbor that's been making a lot of noise. Is that a defense that they can raise? So they asked the ChatGPT about this concept of quiet enjoyment. What is that? And so ChatGPT, any moment now. So it tells them that quiet enjoyment is a legal term that means essentially that they have a right to peace and to be undisturbed in their apartment. And that includes a right to not be disturbed by the landlord or any other party. So yes, they have this additional defense that they can bring up in their housing eviction case. So here's a landlord confidently filed their eviction notice. Here's the tenant sneaking up on them with ChatGPT filing their answer. And that is essentially what we hope will happen. And we know folks are already using ChatGPT for a variety of legal cases. There are examples of people using it in family law to draft restraining order cases. We also know that there are other software like Coatl that are specifically geared towards legal work. So that is already attacking some of the kinks with ChatGPT itself. You can use other technology that utilizes the large language model. So does this mean lawyers and legal aid will be rendered obsolete? I don't think so. I think there's a role here for lawyers and legal aid to play, specifically in terms of checking information, in terms of training tenants as to how to use this software. There's also a role for the judiciary to play. We are all familiar with the infamous New York case where the attorneys were sanctioned for misuse. We're hoping that that wouldn't happen to pro se litigants who are trying to use the software to avoid eviction. And so there is some intervention that could happen there. We're also very familiar with hallucinations, and this is the idea that ChatGPT isn't always accurate. And again, I think these are kinks that will be worked out over time. No technology or software is 100% accurate at the initial instance. We know that there are these other concerns as well. And again, I think these are things that we could work out over time. Certainly, one of the most important is jurisdictional differences. And as you saw in the first example, the tenant would have to tell ChatGPT what state it is in, or he or she is in. There are existential questions that I pose in my research that I don't actually answer, but I think they're still fun to think about and consider. But I don't think they should stop us from moving forward with figuring out how tenants might be able to use this. And I will leave you with this. Few things are more disruptive and destructive to a person's life than eviction. You lose your home, your community, your stability. Basically, with an eviction, you lose all that you have known all at once. And this is the reason that it's important for us to figure this out. Thank you.
See, I told you these were going to be good. All right. Up next. We have Kelli Raker. Now, it's going to get 15 seconds from this slide to your go slide. So you got the time. You ready? Sure. Okay. Maybe I should choose 5 seconds.
No.
All right, here we go. 15 seconds, just leisurely walking. I didn't take this because I don't want to use it, because I can stop.
We've already seen today how modern AI tools are starting to do the traditional work of attorneys, reviewing evidence, researching case law, enhancing legal help. So how will modern AI be used responsibly in legal? Will AI potentially widen or narrow the access to justice gap? We all know there are too many people who live too far from legal help, and those who can find it can't afford it. But moving from the one lawyer to one client model to a one-to-many model with the help of technology could make a difference. Justice Tech founders believe that it will. I believe that it will. I saw this potential when I was running the Duke Law Tech Lab, an early stage accelerator, which evolved to focus exclusively on justice tech startups. At the time, we called that A to J legal tech, or legal services with an access for mission, or a mission for access to legal services. So what is justice tech? Entrepreneurs are building scalable, accessible legal services and information, delivering innovative business models and using emerging technologies. It's nascent and a niche field. And so we wanted to listen to and elevate the voices of the founders of Justice Tech. We dove deep into their experiences with a research study in 2022 that we published last fall. We heard the stories of changemakers who were passionate about access to justice. Some founders had worked as attorneys who had dealt repeatedly helping people with the same problem, but many, especially the quote non-lawyer founders, had personally represented themselves and worked their way through the system. And spoiler alert, it was really hard. As you know, our system is opaque and complex, and it's built for lawyers. So these founders wanted to make things better for the next person. This is the story I heard over and over again. And Justice Tech founders are not trying to put lawyers out of work, but they are trying to solve a market problem. I heard from so many who said that they would love to partner with and work with more attorneys, but the current rules, especially where they were operating, didn't allow it. And so what really the study confirmed for me is that Justice Tech founders are what we call mission-driven mavericks. They're creating consumer-centered, data-informed solutions. And especially for those with a B2C or business-to-consumer product, impacting the access to justice crisis is worth it. And it takes time and energy, expertise and money, and taking on a lot of risks. Some of these are tech risks, like investing in AI, but another source of risk that we heard about is unauthorized practice of law, or UPL. We heard founders say that they lie awake at night, worrying about or being frustrated with UPL complaints. Complaints that came from lawyers, not from consumers of their product. No one I talked to was trying to evade regulation. They want clarity on regulations. They want consistent interpretation across states. They want leadership. They can see how many people there are left to help, and they believe things can be different. But at the end of the day, there's a really big imbalance between the risks and the rewards that are required for success in justice tech. These risks are personal, they're professional, and financial. Of course, every entrepreneur faces risk, but the fractured regulatory structure is exhausting. They know that quality tech products require an intense investment of technical expertise for the initial build and to continually maintain and improve, spend most of their money on technologists and lawyers. And the lack of funding for justice tech, even when the investment market was hot, means founders are constantly educating others about the market opportunity while also seeking grants or prize money or trying to increase their sales just to stay afloat. Most of them don't have deep pockets of their own, but they do understand the problems of the legal system deeply. They need connections to and partnerships with those who are well-resourced. So at the Duke Center on Law and Technology, we're working to build community and bring people together across the industry through a new initiative called RAILS, Responsible AI and Legal Services. What does responsible mean? Well, one thing we know for sure is that it means legal services for all, delivering more legal services, better legal services together. So I invite you to build community with us and help us call upon those with the most resources to fulfill their ethical, professional responsibilities to increase access for all. We believe we can change the risk-reward calculus for justice tech, and we can also be responsible stewards of AI-driven legal innovation. So I hope you'll join us at Rails.
All right. Up next, we have Bill Palin.
Hi. Happy solar eclipse day.
15 seconds till that one starts.
You got it. Everyone was so patient. My name is Bill Palin. I'm an attorney and head of case law at Free Law Project, which I think is, we've all heard a little bit about. Prior to that, I was at Harvard Law School studying access justice technology, and most recently at the University of Hawaii. But there's a bit of a homecoming because this is the moment that Suffolk gave me my law degree. So I'm very proud of that. I taught with Gabe and David, and so it's wonderful to be back. Like I said, I work for Free Law Project. We're probably the leading legal transparency organization. We are trying to build an open source Westlaw, make all this data available and free. And to do that, we do use AI. So I thought I'd take a moment to show you how we've been using AI and maybe talk a little bit about what we're planning to do in the future. Now, it's 15 seconds. I don't have it quite right. So we use AI to see for us, to hear for us, sometimes speak, maybe write a little bit. So I thought I'd bring us back to take a moment, maybe back in the golden times of 2017 when I first really got interested in machine learning. We use it for image classification. We use it for object detection, text classification, speech to text, and other things. And you may be wondering, how does image classification or vision actually fit into it? Does everyone remember Silicon Valley when they parodied a real app that was hot dog or not? All the app did was say, is this a hot dog or is this not a hot dog? Hot dog, not a hot dog. I fell in love with this. I thought this was the greatest thing in the world. I said, how can I use this at work, right? And so I did. I made something that said, is this a financial disclosure or is this not a financial disclosure? Because I had 250,000 documents of Senate records that I wanted to go through, and I couldn't do that by hand. So what we did is we trained a model on these things right here. So these are federal financial judicial records. that are embedded in decades of books, right? Those books on the right. And we created a model to do that. And what we're able to do is we're able to extract out hundreds of federal judges' financial records. Now, all of our code is open source, almost all of our code. And if you're fast enough, you can grab that and you can actually see how we did it. We put it up there. You can train your own model on your own Mac and you can actually build it and do the same thing or see how we did it with instructions. One of the things that enabled us to do was actually figure out what kind of artwork judges are buying. This is a $5 million piece in the Whitney Museum, or the places that they travel around the world. We can extract that kind of information out, really let us shape it. But in professionals' hands, they were able to do this. We solicited ProPublica and the Wall Street Journal to find out the naughty actors going on in the judiciary, which I think you guys have heard of, Clarence. And we actually got a law passed at the end of 2022. We do it more than just for financial disclosures. We actually ingested and are partnered with the Case Law Access Project from Harvard, and we actually looked at their data, and it wasn't quite right. And we actually trained models to actually change the data structure. So we improved over 1 million different records that we can ingest into our database, which leads me to LLMs. We actually are one of the major providers of free data, copyright-free data on the internet. And what do we do with that is we make it free and available. So if you want to build your own LLM, you could go the Coatl initiative, a collaborative open legal data. You can go to Hugging Face. You can download it yourself and start building stuff. Now, don't take my word for it. One of our partners, OpenAI, I think we all sort of know about, they announced the partnership with us and the country of Iceland about 2 days before they self-immolated last year. And I like to think it's the Icelanders, not us, but I don't know. I'm Icelandic, part Icelandic, so I appreciate that. But we also have these amazing partners, some of which we've heard from today. We're also relying on the data that we provide, that we keep up to date, that we're working so hard to build and improve with machine learning and through sweat and tears. Now, the other things that we, for the future that we're really interested in is we have some of the largest collection of oral arguments that we've been collecting. It's a dream of mine to use AI to translate that into and build that into search. So if you're searching, you can not only see the opinion, but you can actually hear judges and attorneys making those arguments in real time. I think that'll be a real game changer. And we're working on the beginning stages of a brand new scanning project that will have to rely on a lot of these technologies to avoid copyrighted material and to improve them nicely. So thank you so much.
These really are one of my favorite parts of the day. All right, so now we're moving on to one of our first multiple people group. So if you could come up if you want to grab some, you might want, yep, that's you. So Philip Coatl, Jalen Coleman, and Najelie Smith-Ortiz. Do you need mics or just gonna use this? Okay, well, let me get you going. If you want this. Okay. All right, there we go. And you'll have 15 seconds warning from when I'm able to click the button. Oh, 2 mics, very nice. And 15-second warning.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope nobody stared at the sun directly today, because I almost did. Was not prepared for the 15-second delay. So, good morning. Well, afternoon. My name is Philip Coatl, and I'm from Hofstra Law School in New York. My colleagues, Najelie Smith-Ortiz and Jalen Coleman, are going to talk about artificial intelligence in the court system today. So the way artificial intelligence is in the court system today is it has a bit of a bad rap, mainly because lawyers have been misusing ChatGPT and getting sanctioned for it. Again, though, that's more of a lawyer issue than a technology issue and just people not really knowing how to use it. But the issue is, it raises the question, like, do we get to use it in today's world? And we do, because we have existing tools already. Lexis AI is fairly new. People use it to draft their briefs, do legal research. I personally started using it. I'm already in love with it. There also exists Relativity and CoCounsel, which are great for analyzing documents and really finding what you need to. But the issue with these tools is that they're made exclusively for professionals and within the sphere of the legal field. There's no way for a regular person off the street to just go into CoCounsel with a contract that they got from someone else and see if it's good for them. So what Hofstra wanted to do was find a way to bridge the legal and the non-legal worlds. That way, so not only would it help the legal professionals in their job, but an everyday person can use it to look up their real estate agreement or actually read a complaint that was filed against them. So they created the Dean's Legal Tech Fellowship, which the idea was to take a handful of computer science students and law students and not only learn from each other, but really figure out how to make not only technology help lawyers in their practice, but to help everyday people.
So that brings us to our first project, which was a small claims court system, and we created a bot for that. So you're probably wondering why the small claims court. Basically, it's the most accessible court when you really think about it. In theory, it's a low cost, and likely there's a lot of people entering it with no representation. So as you can see on the statistics here, in New York State, in the 5 boroughs, there was over 5,000 small claims that were filed, and likely many of these did not have representation. So our goals for our claim bot was to create something that was simple in design, had plain language, so no legalese, and we really wanted to especially look out for those with that didn't have English proficiency, and that's why we made it adaptable and we created about 40 to 50 languages that can use. So we started off first researching in the New York Small Claims Court guidelines, then we moved on and we looked at the user data and the requirements that were needed for that. And then after that, we took that information and we made a flow chart. And we created the training data and used that data to then test the bot. And then we did all this while ensuring that the data was flexible, efficient, and practical. So this right here is the source of our research. We scoured the New York court's website, which on the right side, you can see a manual, which was a really long PDF that's kind of daunting for those that don't have legal knowledge. And it's exactly why we went out and did this. And then we took that information and we basically mapped out a roadmap of what the user would go through when they're filing a claim. We took all the relevant key points and then also some exit ramps when people didn't qualify.
So how does our claim bot work? Basically, we used the computer science kids from Hofstra undergrad, and they helped us develop this program using programs and softwares like Raza framework and Python, and also our training data that we developed to simulate the user input. This is a simulation of our claim bot showing how the model basically guides the user into filing a claim in small claims court system. And also collects their data that they put in.
Playing. No.
Technical difficulties.
Okay.
There we go. So some specific input that we collect are county information, especially from the defendant, is in order to ensure that the user is filing in the correct court to make sure that there isn't misfiling. Then the bot takes the data, the training data, and their input and comes up with a confidence score based on the types of claims that you can file in small claims court system, which are contractual claims, personal injury claims, and property damage claims. Then we give the user an auto-filled claim for every county in New York State and every small claims court system so that they can just print it out, e-file it, and pay their filing fee. Our ambitions for ClaimBot is for it to be implemented in all small claims court system websites so they can be accessible by individuals, lawyers, small businesses, you name it. And also for all those who are intimidated by the process and can't have access to legal assistance, and for more programs like ClaimBot to be implemented. Thanks so much for listening. Najelie Smith-Ortiz, Jalen Coleman, and Philip Coatl.
See, aren't you glad you came back? This is the best. Now we have is Olivia Luongo and Sophia Ceniza. And I'll start the 15 second go now. That way it's not quite as daunting. All right.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Well, Just wait for it. Okay. Hi, I'm Olivia Luongo,
And I'm Sophia Ceniza.
and we're student attorneys from Georgetown's IPIP Clinic, and we're excited to share our presentation on using surveys to put the AI in pedagogical priorities.
So we'd like to get a few responses from the group, but what word comes to mind when you think of AI? Just feel free to shout out. And if you're a clinic professor or a legal professional, how many of you use AI on client matters? And feel free to just raise your hand. And the same for those who are students. How many of you? Okay, so not too many. And how many of you use Google search, spell check, Lexis, or Westlaw? So a lot more. So what we've ended up finding, or what we're looking to do with our survey, is kind of explore the ways that although not everyone thinks that they're using AI, you are if you're using these common sources. So what we've done for our survey is look at how you can't develop pedagogical priorities without understanding what clinicians, students, and even clients know about AI. And our response is conduct a comprehensive anonymized survey of these stakeholders.
And this talk prepares you to adapt our approach to your institution or clinic and clarify whether AI is appropriate for your pedagogical priorities. And we're going to explore each C in turn, as well as establish concrete steps that you can take to implement each one. So first, lawyers have ethical responsibilities that we believe require them to develop a baseline understanding of AI and its mechanics before adopting those tools in practice. And the ethical rules governing competency itself are only the beginning. And we're grounding our conversation in the ethical rules because we focused on clinics. And as you can see, and as Professor Jade Brown noted, the integration of AI implicates multiple APA and procedural rules such as competence, diligence, confidentiality, advisor, candor, and even the federal rules. So our response is to educate stakeholders, and we believe we have an obligation to educate stakeholders, aka our communities, about AI's mechanics and how those mechanics might implicate the rules. And that may begin with educating ourselves.
And on to our second C, creativity. AI predicts reductively and lawyers think creatively. The profession should be thinking not just about whether AI can conduct certain tasks, but whether it should. One important question is whether these technologies actually improve outcomes for clients or if it even performs lawyerly tasks well. While Professor Colleen Chen and several co-authors measured some positive outcomes for pro se litigants and responding legal aid attorneys, future research should continue to study improved outcomes for clients. As client-centered lawyers, clinicians have an obligation to explore whether or how AI is valuable to clients, not simply helpful to their lawyers. And they can do this by exploring creative AI uses. Of course, there are also drawbacks of this response. Professor Jason Schultz and Jake Carr have examined the conflicts between clinical pedagogy and AI, which extend to thinking creatively about the role of lawyers. And now we're left to consider, how can clinicians put those questions into practice?
And finally, our last goal is critical counseling, which is client-centered counseling informed by critical thinking. In other words, what clinicians do best and what we strive to do every day in our practice in our clinic. And client-centered lawyers have an obligation to expose additional considerations beyond ethical obligations that we've mentioned and communicate relevant considerations to clients pursuant to Rule 2.1 Advisor. And one framework to assess technologies such as AI is the SLATE inventory, which was developed by our supervisor and IPIP founder, Professor Amanda Lewandowski at Georgetown Law. And as you can see, SLATE addresses considerations beyond ethics such as sustainability, labor, accessibility, and transparency. And some clients might not care about these SLATE considerations. For others, they'll be dispositive. And for others, they're just going to be the start of a larger conversation. That's integrating socio-technical competency with client-centered lawyering.
And so by the end of today, we hope to give you this TLDR, and that you can put these 3 C's into practice by surveying your community and developing flexible guidance that promotes ethical client-centered lawyering. Shouting out Suffolk's own Professor Sarah Boonin, we're excited to have presented our own approach here for demonstrating the importance of community surveys. And we'd like to remind you that it's easy. Educating stakeholders, exploring AI's value for clients, and exposing additional considerations can help you put the 3 C's into each of your own pedagogical priorities. And lastly, we'd like to thank you, our audience, our fellow student attorneys, our fearless leaders, Amanda Lewandowski and Shweta Kumar, and our clinical programs assistant director, Patrick Griffith. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love these talks at this time of the day. This is I remember reading a book called When, I think by Daniel Pink, talks about this is like the worst time of day to do anything because everyone's energy is low. But I don't know, I'm finding this great. This is fun. So our last speaker of the day is Allie, and I'm gonna start the 15-second bit. You ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, everyone. I'm about to ask you a question, so just get prepared. I'm just going to start. All right. How many of you have kids, are currently expecting a child, or plan to have kids in the future? And now I know I'm in a room full of lawyers here, but how many of you have a legally binding plan in place for what happens to your children if you and your child's other parent were to pass away? This scenario kept me up at night after I had my daughter, but I was completely immersed in early parenthood. I had no time or mental capacity to deal with the process of estate planning. In talking to other parents, many of them were in the same position. Few parents with young children have a will, and can you blame them? Dealing with your finances is the last thing that you have time for when you have new children. But the fear of who will take our kids if, God forbid, something happens to us looms so large. I wanted to find an accessible solution. I wanted to solve the one problem that kept me up at night. 2 classes here at Suffolk helped plant the seed for me. First, my Trust and Estates class with Professor Schuerman. This class helped me identify the what, specifically that you don't need to create a will to designate a legal guardian for your children. You can do so through a separate and much simpler testamentary instrument. Next, my 21st century law class with Professor Tenenbaum. This class exposed me to the how. How could I make guardianship more accessible to busy young parents, specifically millennials who are more comfortable with online solutions? And in this class, I also heard from inspirational leaders like Julia Rogers that we heard from today from Hello Prenup, and Dorna Moyney from Gavel, who really helped lead the way in building these consumer-focused technology products. Next, I contacted Professor Tenenbaum, and he helped guide me to take a more systematic approach to solving this problem, specifically through the process for productizing a legal service, which I've been doing for the past several months. So first, I worked to identify the problem. I talked to as many parents as I possibly could. Very few had a will. Why? I've been meaning to make one, but I just haven't gotten around to it. Yep, I was in good company. Next, I surveyed the competitive environment. And I realized that nobody was offering just guardianship. Nobody was targeting new parents. And nobody was taking a step-by-step accessible approach to the estate planning process. Then the elevator pitch. Let's just say my family and friends deserve a massive reward for hearing me go on and on and on about this for the last several months. Next, I got started on building an MVP or a prototype. I used Gavel.io, which is a platform that helps lawyers automate their legal practice. And I used that to complete logic-based questions and aligned them with variable-based output documents. I designed the prototype specifically for Massachusetts parents to quickly and easily designate a legal guardian for their children without having to go through the process of creating a will. With this prototype, I started to conduct prototyping sessions, and I launched a beta to friends and family. I really wanted to understand if people would pay for this product. I'm really happy to report that I saw an over 40% conversion rate on that initial beta email. Then, marketing and brand. I am a former startup marketing leader, and I'm also a millennial, and so I knew the importance that brand was going to play. With the name Trusty, I hope to inspire confidence, empowerment, and accessibility. Finally, launch. I launched this product to Massachusetts families this past March, and I'm really encouraged by the early signs of interest that I'm seeing, and it just tells me that this is a solution that many young parents need. Trusty empowers new parents to take a step-by-step approach to the estate planning process, starting with what many parents have told me is the most important part, designating a guardian for our children. I do believe that Trusty is going to help many parents access the estate planning process. But one thing I can surely guarantee is that I have gained some really incredible skills throughout this process that I know are going to help me serve my clients in the future. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation. Again, as a mom myself, I really believe in the value that Trusty is going to provide to families, and I'm just hoping to expand it to more people as soon as I can. You can check out my Instagram or check out my website, mytrusty.com. Thank you so much.
I love that we're back on schedule. Actually, you're 4 minutes ahead of schedule. So slowly move to the elevators, because I hope that everything's set up upstairs, but I have not seen. What you'll do is you go to the elevators or the stairs to the right, and we're on the 5th floor. The elevators will open. Hang a left. You should see things set up. We will have snacks, some drinks. I'm going to look at, I did see some emails on the things people built. Look over those. And mostly we're going to mingle and have fun. But I think maybe at 15 after, we'll look at those things that people built, and I'll figure out who I'm going to give the hats to. All right. Oh, wait. Yeah, all my thank you slides are upstairs. Okay, I thought I had missed some obligations. Upstairs.